when we talk about a medical diagnosis, there is a fundamental expectation of precision. It's supposed to be like engineering.
Right, very cut and dry.
Yep, exactly. You break your arm, the x-ray shows that jagged white line, and the doctor just points to the film and says, there it is, that's the problem.
You can physically see it.
But what happens when you step into a diagnostic landscape where the x-ray machine is supposedly broken? Or, worse, where doctors stop looking for broken bones entirely and just start taking pictures of ghosts? Welcome to the deep dive.
It is great to be here for this one.
You are someone who wants to understand the foundational history of our institutions. Specifically, you're looking at the arguments that they've been completely captured by feminist and Marxist ideologies over the last few decades.
Which is a heavy topic, but so relevant.
Extremely relevant. You're looking for the red-pilled, unfiltered breakdown of how modern society defines work, weakness, and masculinity. And today we are unpacking a massive, really provocative ebook that tackles all of this head-on.
It really pulls no punches.
None at all. It's called Celebrating Sloth, Indolence, Idleness, and Satan's Power by Conrad Riker. And let me tell you, this is an ultra-long, incisive, and honestly just fascinating text. It basically acts as a survival guide for the modern manosphere.
It's dense, but it moves fast.
It does. Now, before we jump in, please remember to like and subscribe to the show. And I highly, highly urge you to check out Amazon Kindle and Google Play Books to buy this book. You're going to want the full text. And be sure to follow the author at Conrad Riker on Substack. If you want the full, unfiltered manual after we unpack it today, you're going to want to buy this ebook.
And just to set the ground rules before we get into the weeds here, because we really need to be clear about this.
Yeah, absolutely. Lay it out.
Because this source contains highly politically charged content targeting left-wing, feminist, and Marxist ideologies, we must state that we are not taking any sides.
Right. We're neutral guides here.
Exactly. We are not endorsing the viewpoints of the content, but we are here to impartially report and unpack the ideas exactly as the author presents them. Our goal is just to help you understand the core arguments of the text.
Perfectly said. We're just laying out the blueprint he drew up, and I gotta say, the journey ahead is intense.
It covers a lot of ground.
We're going to explore how the medical industry, the welfare state, the therapy industrial complex, and academia have all allegedly collaborated to weaponize victimhood.
And pathologize traditional masculinity.
Yes, and ultimately reward sheer laziness. So let's start at the very beginning of the text, which is the manufacturing of a disease. Riker points to the 1980s as ground zero for what he calls the fatigue fraud.
Yeah, he points specifically to a 1984 cluster of patients in Incline Village, that's right near Lake Tahoe in Nevada.
Okay, so what exactly happened there?
Well, a local nurse reported a group of people experiencing severe fatigue, sore throats, and headaches. Now, in a normal infectious disease outbreak, you look for objective markers.
Right, like a fever or something.
Yeah, exactly. You look for a fever, elevated white blood cell counts, maybe an enlarged spleen, this is something measurable. But as Riker emphasizes, this Lake Tahoe cluster had none of that.
Wait, none of it?
None. There was no fever, there were no infection markers, there was no clear pathology under a microscope. Yet by 1988, the CDC officially designated this cluster of symptoms as chronic fatigue syndrome, or CFS.
So Riker's core argument is that the medical establishment effectively created a disease out of a universal human symptom. I mean, everyone gets tired.
Right. He argues they created a disease out of tiredness without a single objective biomarker, virus, or lab test to back it up.
Okay, let's unpack this. How does a doctor diagnose an infectious disease outbreak with no fever and no virus? I mean, Riker points out that follow-up studies in 1988 found no consistent viral pattern and no actual contagion, right?
Yeah, it wasn't spreading like a normal virus spreads.
So how on earth did it become an official CDC diagnosis?
It happened through a pretty drastic shifting of diagnostic criteria, which Riker tracks meticulously in the book. He focuses heavily on the 1994 Fukuda criteria.
He calls it a checklist carnival, doesn't he?
He does, yeah. Because to get a diagnosis of CFS under Fukuda, a patient didn't need a blood test. They only needed 6 months of self-reported fatigue alongside 4 of 8 incredibly vague complaints.
Vague like what?
Things like difficulty concentrating or unrefreshing sleep or muscle pain.
I mean, that sounds like literally anyone working a 50-hour week with a toddler at home.
Precisely Riker's point. There was no machine to measure this. It was entirely based on taking the patient's word for it. And what's fascinating here is how it evolved. Decades later, in 2015, the Institute of Medicine rebranded the condition to SAI,
That stands for systemic exertion intolerance disease.
Exactly. And they centered the diagnosis on a concept called post-exertional malaise. Riker argues this too exists entirely in the patient's self-reporting. It literally just means, I feel bad after I do things.
So Riker is essentially arguing that this diagnosis is like a doctor writing a prescription for a ghost.
That's a great way to put it.
But we have to ask, as the author does, if there is no underlying physical pathology, why did the CDC and the medical establishment validate it so aggressively? Especially when Riker brings in some pretty heavy data points to the contrary.
Oh, the 2017 BMC medicine study.
Yes, let's break that study down because it feels like the smoking gun of his first chapter.
It really is central to his thesis. So in this 2017 study, researchers took patients diagnosed with CFS under those subjective Fukuda rules and put them on a CPET machine. That's a cardiopulmonary exercise test.
And a CPET machine isn't just a treadmill test where a doctor asks if you're feeling tired.
No, not at all. It measures the exact exchange of oxygen and carbon dioxide at a cellular level. It proves objectively whether your muscles are actually failing to generate energy or if your brain is just telling you to stop.
Okay, so what did the CPET machine actually show?
It showed absolutely no physiological difference in exercise capacity between the CFS patients and the healthy controls.
Wait, really? None?
None. Their lungs worked perfectly, their hearts pumped normally, their muscles processed oxygen and cleared lactic acid exactly like a healthy person's would. The cellular machinery was completely intact.
So Riker uses this to assert that their bodies weren't broken, it was their work ethic that was broken.
Exactly. And that brings us to the PACE trial backlash, which Riker presents as proof that the advocacy groups surrounding these illnesses don't actually want a cure.
This part blew my mind. The 2011 PACE trial was this massive, multi-million-dollar study showing that cognitive behavioral therapy and graded exercise therapy actually led to measurable improvements, right?
Yes, the patients who exercised incrementally got stronger and returned to normal life. It was a cure.
But the activists completely revolted. They called the exercise torture and aggressively demanded the study be retracted. Why fight a cure? It makes no sense.
Well, from Riker's perspective, this reaction makes perfect sense if you view the illness sociologically rather than medically.
How so?
Because recovery threatens a constructed identity. If a patient's entire life, their online community, their social standing, is built around the identity of being chronically ill and marginalized, getting well feels like a betrayal.
You lose your community.
You lose your community, you lose your victim status, and crucially, Riker notes, you lose your state funding. Because once a subjective symptom is validated by medicine, it is inevitably monetized by the state.
Which leads directly into the disability racket. And the financial cost he lays out here is just staggering.
The numbers are massive.
We are talking about $154 billion paid out in Social Security Administration disability in 2023 alone. And within that, the Government Accountability Office flagged $13 billion in improper payments in just 1 year.
$13 billion.
That is a massive amount of taxpayer money being siphoned out of the system.
It's an economy of its own. And Riker explains the exact structural loophole that makes this massive wealth transfer possible. He points to the SSA's Blue Book.
That's the manual they use to evaluate disability claims.
Exactly. Specifically, Section 14.10 lists CFS under immune system disorders. But Riker argues the system is designed to reward those who perform helplessness while punishing those who actually labor. Because the Blue Book allows for disability based purely on self-reported subjective symptoms.
So the password to get the money is just saying you have post-exertional malaise.
Pretty much. A doctor's note saying the patient reports this malaise is often legally sufficient to secure lifelong monthly checks.
Man, he shares some infuriating anecdotes to hook the listener on this point. Like Maria Thompson.
Oh, the marathon runner.
Yes. She was a 52-year-old who collected SSDI for severe cognitive dysfunction and debilitating exhaustion. She claimed she couldn't get out of bed most days.
And then what happened?
Meanwhile, her nephew was live streaming her crossing the finish line of the Miami Marathon. She ran 26.2 miles in 4 hours and 17 minutes.
Which is incredible, because running a marathon requires months of progressive, grueling physical training. It requires cellular energy, cardiovascular endurance, all the things she legally swore to the government she completely lacked.
And the SSA just missed it until the live stream surfaced. And that's not an isolated incident at all.
No, he has plenty of examples.
Riker mentions a man in Florida who filed for disability claiming he couldn't stand for more than 10 minutes due to debilitating fatigue. 2 weeks after depositing his first check, he goes viral on TikTok doing a 4-minute highly coordinated hip-hop dance routine.
It's just brazen.
Yeah.
And then there is the 2018 California fraud ring.
Right, the Employment Development Department bust.
Yeah, investigators busted a group of supposedly bedridden men collecting benefits for ME and CFS. When they surveilled them, these men were literally caught hammering on construction scaffolds.
Think about the core strength and balance required to just stand on a construction scaffold, let alone swing a heavy hammer for 8 hours.
And another guy in that same ring was driving for Uber 60 hours a week.
It's insane. But even when the SSA tried to crack down, nothing happened. Riker points out that the SSA actually launched an AI pilot program in Texas.
Right, in 2023, they used an AI system to scrape public social media and fitness tracker data of applicants.
And the AI flagged a 22% fraud rate among CFS applicants. 1 in 5 were posting undeniable photographic or GPS proof that contradicted their claims of being bedbound.
But consequences were practically non-existent.
Why? If an AI literally hands a federal agency proof of a 22% fraud rate, why wouldn't the government jump at the chance to save billions?
Because the system fears media backlash over denying invisible illnesses. Riker points out that bureaucrats would rather quietly pay the fraudulent claims than face a viral PR nightmare where activists accuse them of erasing marginalized people.
So who exactly is driving this cultural shift where inactivity is rewarded? I mean, who is pushing this? This leads directly into Riker's critique of modern gender dynamics.
Yes, this is where he shifts into sociology.
He notes that 77% of chronic fatigue syndrome diagnoses are women. And furthermore, he cites a study showing that women who actively identify with feminist ideology are over 3 times more likely to self-diagnose with CFS.
This is a crucial part of his argument. He synthesizes the idea that feminism and Marxism have weaponized domestic life.
How does he trace that?
By citing feminist theorists from the 1970s and 80s, primarily Silvia Federici. Her work basically argued that basic household chores, cooking, cleaning, raising kids, are unpaid labor that props up capitalist exploitation.
So modern women have been taught that participating in a household is exploitation.
Exactly. And Riker explained how this ties into the concept of spoon theory.
Right, the spoons. Now, originally this was invented by a blogger in 2003 as a metaphor for living with lupus, wasn't it?
Yes. The idea was that a visible autoimmune disease gives you only so many spoons of energy a day, and every task costs a spoon. But Riker shows how it morphed from a medical metaphor into a socio-political framework.
It's literally taught on 147 U.S. college campuses now.
It is. And it's used to justify perfectly healthy adults avoiding basic responsibilities.
The examples he highlights are wild. He talks about women in Portland holding No Scrub Tuesdays, where they meet up to burn aprons.
It's performative.
Highly performative. He pulls quotes from subreddit threads where women brag about not washing a single dish in 3 years, calling it a strike against patriarchy.
While their husbands presumably do all the dishes.
Exactly. And there's the Canadian woman who won spousal support from her ex-husband specifically to pay for a monthly cleaning service, all because she claims she suffered from the ongoing fatigue of emotional labor.
Right, emotional labor, a term that used to mean the professional requirement of service workers to remain pleasant, now hijacked to describe the supposed burden of basic adult communication.
So what does this all mean? It's as if the concept of a strike has been moved from the factory floor to the living room, but the only person getting penalized is the husband who now has to work 50 hours a week and do the laundry because his partner is out of spoons.
And this ideological shift requires a mechanism to validate it to the outside world, right? Which brings us to the therapists who rubber stamp these behaviors.
Ah, the therapy industrial complex. Let's unpack this $260 billion mental health industry.
Riker argues that therapists do not want patients to get better.
Because a cured man is a dead revenue stream.
Exactly. If we connect this to the bigger picture, Riker focuses on how trauma-informed care is used as a blank check to excuse laziness. They've expanded the definition of trauma to include normal daily friction.
Like a boss asking you to meet a deadline.
Right. And he cites a 2020 Journal of Health Economics study to back this up. It showed that patients who cycle through 4 or more therapists are 73% more likely to apply for disability.
So therapy isn't fixing them, it's just helping them build a case to exit the workforce permanently.
That's his exact argument.
He details these energy mapping circles in Portland, where grown men sit around drawing spoon budgets with crayons to negotiate changing a light bulb with their inner self.
It sounds absurd, but it's a real practice.
And he mentions a Boulder therapist charging $225 an hour to teach men how to set boundaries with productivity. Plus, the FTC just issued a $1.5 million fine against companies selling fake cellular energy formulas, basically sugar water, to these patients.
The pill pushers are a huge part of the racket.
Think about this. Rikers are challenging you to look at whether the therapy you're told to seek is actually just a subscription service for your own surrender.
Which is a profound question. It transitions us nicely because if the disease is a sociological construct, what is actually making people so physically tired?
Right, they aren't all faking the feeling of exhaustion.
No, they feel terrible. But Riker argues the answer lies entirely in their daily habits. This is the sedentary scam.
Let's explore that argument. Modern fatigue is entirely self-inflicted through digital addiction and horrible diets.
Right. Pew Research shows that 61% of CFS claimants spend over 6 hours a day on entertainment screens.
He highlights that Ohio man who collected SSI for 18 months, claiming he was too fatigued to function. An audit revealed he logged 1,400 hours on the video game Skyrim in that exact same 18-month period.
That requires immense cognitive focus.
A full-time job's worth. And it's not just screens. The CDC data shows 74% of Americans exceed added sugar limits.
And this is where Riker breaks down the biological reality. Ultra-processed foods make up 60% of the American diet.
And what does that do to the body?
It causes massive blood sugar spikes, which leads to insulin resistance. This is metabolic syndrome. Your cells literally become starved for energy because they can't process the food you're eating, so you crash. You feel a profound, heavy exhaustion.
And then they go to the doctor and get misdiagnosed with post-exertional malaise.
Exactly. Riker points out the hypocrisy here. Patients accuse doctors of fat phobia when they're told to change their diet. They prefer to believe their DNA is broken rather than putting down the Mountain Dew and taking accountability.
And it's not just daytime habits. It's the complete destruction of the circadian rhythm. Which brings us to the sleep lie.
Right. The sleep hygiene aspect is huge.
Here's where it gets really interesting. The overlap between the gaming community and disability claims.
Riker unpacks this concept of delayed sleep phase syndrome, or DSPS.
Before we get to the science, let's talk about Carl. Carl filed for disability due to debilitating insomnia. He submitted a handwritten sleep diary claiming he just couldn't fall asleep.
But the Apple Watch data showed otherwise.
Yes. Subpoena data showed he was awake until 2:17 a.m. watching Flat Earth YouTube videos.
His body wasn't broken, his discipline was. And Riker brings in a Harvard study showing that blue light from these screens suppresses melatonin by up to 50%.
So they're artificially inducing their insomnia?
Yes. Riker argues that people are abusing over-the-counter melatonin to mask terrible sleep hygiene, while the state subsidizes their digital escapism.
It's wild. And then there's the VA internal investigation. They exposed 212 veterans claiming 100% disability for ME and CFS, but they were logging 50-plus hours a week as raid leaders in World of Warcraft.
Coordinating 40 people in real time requires incredible stamina.
It really does. And the Twitch streamer, Chronic Slayer, making money off sympathy videos about being bedbound while gaming 8 hours a day on his main channel.
So if the evidence of behavioral self-sabotage is so clear, why does society continue to treat these individuals as heroes?
That is the big question, and Riker blames the cult of victimhood and media malpractice. Stanford research shows posts about suffering get 3.2 times more engagement than posts about achievement.
The algorithm literally rewards misery.
It does. It's created the sick girl aesthetic on TikTok. Hashtags like hashtag SpoonieLife have 2.1 billion views. Influencers are selling $89 CFS survival kits with fake prescription bottles. It's medical cosplay.
Riker's critique of the mainstream media here is scathing. He analyzes Netflix's 2018 docuseries, Afflicted.
Which was funded by the Progressive Ford Foundation. Right.
Yes, and the BBC's Keogh films. Riker argues these documentaries operate without any medical verification whatsoever. They push a narrative that suffering equals moral superiority, while completely ignoring the hardworking men who actually keep society running.
Right. They ignore the plumbers and the linemen to focus on someone who claims they're allergic to electricity. And this media narrative doesn't just exist on screens, it has fundamentally captured the highest institutions of learning.
The Education of Excuses chapter.
Yes. He details the explosion of CFS accommodations across elite universities.
Academia has replaced merit and effort with what Riker calls a participation trophy factory.
I'll read off Riker's list of institutional failures here because it's mind-blowing. Harvard and Yale are allowing indefinite medical leave without objective testing. A Duke student claimed CFS, got sweeping accommodations, and then posted a 10-day hiking trip across the Swiss Alps on Instagram.
And the colleges just let it happen.
Evergreen State College dropped all attendance requirements for trauma-informed pedagogy. And my favorite, the Vassar student who skipped a stressful written language exam for energy conservation, only to deliver a 20-minute fluent Mandarin speech at a campus festival that same weekend.
Think of the cognitive load required to speak a secondary language fluently in front of a crowd. It's immense.
But universities are so terrified of lawsuits and activist backlash that they've legally institutionalized laziness.
Forcing taxpayers and hardworking peers to carry the burden of the professionally lazy. And this academic and cultural environment creates a lethal double standard for men, which leads to the core theme of the book.
The masculinity trap and the accountability of this. This section speaks directly to you, the listener. Riker outlines the misandrist double bind.
Men are expected to be strong, quiet providers, but they are punished and labeled toxic for those exact traits.
But meanwhile, if they actually show weakness, they are immediately discarded.
This raises an important question about how workplace HR policies and the ADA have been weaponized. Riker asserts that women can take mental health days and be praised by HR for their emotional intelligence.
But men who asked for the same are fired for being resistant to therapy.
The data backs it up. The Stanford study shows men requesting mental health accommodations are 40% less likely to be promoted.
40%. And Riker contrasts the Ontario electrician who was denied SSDI for severe back pain with a woman who was approved the exact same week for emotional trauma from a remote data entry job.
There's a glaring discrepancy.
Riker describes the modern workplace as a gendered buffet. Men get the scraps of accountability, while women get the all-you-can-eat pass of emotional accommodations.
So what is the cure? Riker outlines it in The Purpose Prescription and The Patriarchal Revival.
His ultimate solution to the epidemic of softness is faith, discipline, and hard manual labor.
He synthesizes the Protestant work ethic and Viktor Frankl's insights on suffering. Meaning is medicine.
And his proof is the Amish. The Journal of Rural Health published statistics showing 0 cases of chronic fatigue syndrome among the Amish. 0.
Because a culture built on labor, family, faith, and traditional gender roles completely immunizes a population against imagined exhaustion.
They don't have time to be fatigued, the cows need milking. He also brings in the Benedictine monks' rule of ora et labora, pray and work, and Jocko Willink's discipline equals freedom boot camps.
When men return to goal-oriented, structured, male-only spaces, which have surged by 33% according to the FBI, they don't find softness, they find actual power.
Riker's prescription is brutal. He says the cure isn't in a pill bottle, it's in a pair of steel-toe boots. It's an absolute rejection of therapy culture.
As we wrap this up, I want to leave the listener with a thought-provoking concept building on the material. Consider Thomas Sowell's Idiot Index, the measure of how many people live off productivity they didn't create.
Wow.
As you look at the institutions around you, ask yourself, is the ultimate goal of the modern welfare state to cure illness? Or is it to manufacture dependency so that the state becomes the ultimate patriarch?
If you want the full, unapologetic truth to arm yourself against this system, you need to read this book. Check out Amazon Kindle and Google Playbooks to buy Celebrating Sloth, Indolence, Idleness, and Satan's Power.
It's a mandatory read.
Follow the author at Conrad Riker at Substack for more insights. And please like and subscribe to The Deep Dive to ensure you never miss another breakdown of the sources that matter. We'll see you next time.